All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Looks like we have several attendees that have arrived. So first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for attending our webinar. This is the third in our series of introducing the new Map Suite 3.0 product line. Today we're going to go over a few different things. We're going to focus mainly on the Map Suite Desktop Edition 3.0 and the beta that was released a couple of weeks ago. And this was our first beta of the Map Suite Desktop Edition, so I'll focus on where we're going with this product, what it currently supports, and all of the interesting new features that we have. After that, I'll give a demonstration so we can see it in action with some of our sample application and examples. And then at the end, I'll show you where you can get more help and learn more about the product. And we're looking for a lot of feedback from you since this is a beta. So please ask lots of questions, and at the end we'll have a Q&A. To ask questions during the webinar, feel free to. There is the questions input box on the webinar software where you can ask as many questions you like. We have David Rehagen, our Chief Architect, as a panelist today, and he will be answering them as I go through the presentation. And at the end, we'll answer any other questions that you might have and review those ones that were asked during the webinar. So I invite all of you to ask lots of questions and ask away. So with that, let's get started. So for all of you that are new to Map Suite Desktop Edition, and I thought it would be good to just give a high-level overview of what the product is. And what the product is a control that allows you to add custom mapping functionality to any Windows desktop application. Now we have controls for Winforms, the older legacy model from 2005 and before. And we also have support for WPF now, which is an exciting thing that lots of our customers have been asking for. So that's one of the nice things about Desktop Edition 3.0 is if you're starting a new application and you want to use WPF, we now have a control that will fit your needs. If you're not familiar with Map Suite Desktop, we have lots of GIS and mapping functionality built into it, and we'll be able to go through a lot of that today with the demonstration, and you'll see all of the capabilities that we have with the product. It will work in Visual Studio 2005 or 2008, so if you haven't had a chance to upgrade to 2008 yet, you can still use the desktop edition in the older version of Visual Studio. And we do provide a fully functional 60-day evaluation so you can test out and build your own application using the product to make sure that it meets your needs. So at a high level, that's what Map Suite Desktop Edition is. What we try to do is provide you the best developer toolkit to build custom mapping applications to meet your business needs. So with that, let's start talking about some of the new features with Desktop Edition 3.0. One of the big changes, as you may have seen with all of our 3.0 products, is we're supporting many more formats now. GIS data comes in formats wide-ranging, and previous versions just focused on Esri shapefiles for vector data. Well, with 3.0, we kind of re-engineered the whole API to allow for all sorts of different formats to be supported. We now include SQL 2008 support since it has some spatial data types in it, Oracle Spatial, PostGRE, a lot of different spatial databases, just to name a few. Additionally, again, another great feature is we do support WPF as a control. So now if you're building one of these, building a new desktop application, WPF, we have a solution for that. We've added lots of new rendering styles such as regex and other various styles that allow you to have full control over how the map's rendered and makes it easier to implement custom rendering techniques. Finally, some other noteworthy enhancements are we applying more with GIS standards such as well-known text and well-known binary that allows us to easily read various data formats. We have built-in support for map rotation, and we'll go over a little bit of that. I know a lot of desktop application developers want to be able to rotate the map as part of their requirements. And another major feature is an extensible and progressive API. If a lot of you attended the last webinar, David Rehagen put on a great presentation of how to extend our API to do things such as reading your own custom data format if we didn't support it. And so the API is built in a way that allows you to extend our features so you can read in custom data formats, our styles so you can implement your own custom styles, and even the canvas for which you're drawing on. So pretty powerful stuff. This webinar is going to be a little more introductory in the fact that we're just going to go over some of the functionality included in the desktop edition. And last but not least, we do have grid support in 3.0. And if for some of you that aren't familiar with grid, it's an interesting way to do some GIS analysis, and we have a nice sample in there that shows how to do such a thing. All right, with that, enough of the PowerPoint slides. I think it's time to get into the demonstration. And what I'm going to be demonstrating today are the actual how do I sample applications that come along with the evaluation version. And there's a lot of them in here, but if any of you download the evaluation edition, I suggest you take a little time and just go through them all, because it'll do a number of things. One is it'll show you the breadth of the API and what's all possible. So as you're building your application, you can get a good idea of all the different functionality that's available and how you would implement it in to meet your needs. The other thing it does is it gives you great code examples, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can look and see, well, here's how the code they executed in the how do I samples, and take those bits of snippets and pieces to build up your application. So I always like to tell people to make sure that they breeze through them to just have a good idea of where to find these examples. So with that, let's get out of this boring PowerPoint and move to the real live code here. Okay, with the how do I samples, we just have a tree control over here on the left that has them grouped in various categories. So let's get started with a few of these. The first one is just showing you how to display a simple map, and we provide some sample shapefile data with the sample apps just to help show how to load these layers and things of this nature. And with any of these samples, you can just click on the C# source button and see how easy it is to do one of these operations. So for example, in this display simple sample, all we're doing is loading up a shapefile feature layer, giving it the path of the shapefile. A lot of this will look familiar to you if you've seen previous versions of MapSuite, but we have our pre-built zoom level sets where you can set the style for each zoom level and whether you want to apply that to as many zoom levels as you want. In this case, we're using a very simple one, and we're just applying it to all of them. But what that allows you to do is to change the appearance of layers as you zoom in or zoom out. One concept that is new with 3.0 is the concept of overlay. Before, we used to just have a layers collection off of the map, and you would add layers to that. Well, now we have another level of hierarchy where you can add them, to overlays. And in this case, we're just adding it to the built-in overlay, a static overlay, and you can add as many layers as you'd like to that. But we have a built-in static overlay and a dynamic overlay. And an overlay allows you to refresh that certain set of layers, so you can have control. So for example, if you have these static layers, but you had a bunch of information that you want to display on top of that changed quite a bit, you could just put that in the dynamic overlay and refresh it accordingly. In addition to that, we have custom overlays, which will give you full control of setting up as many of these refreshable groups of layers that you'd like to have on your map. So it gives you ultimate flexibility as you're building up your map and designing your application. Well, with that, we do have all the basic functions that you would see in a normal mapping application, zooming in, zooming out, so all of those things that that you would typically expect. In order to be more in line with what we did with our web edition in Map Suite 3.0, the track zoom still does exist, but we've tied it to the Shift key, so if you hold down the Shift key, it will zoom in automatically. This doesn't prevent you from building your own track zoom like we did in previous versions. You would just need to, add your own button and put the map, zoom the map in when a track rectangle is drawn at that point. So we just did the Shift track zoom to give more consistency across our products, and we got a lot of positive feedback around that. We also have panning. As you can see, you can pan the map using pan controls and things of that nature, so expose all of those APIs, just like previous versions. So nothing ground shaking there with Map Suite 3.0. One new feature that is coming with the next release of the beta will be the dynamic panning that will fill in the white space as you drag the map around. So that's a feature that we're going to be adding very soon, and I think a lot of people will be very happy with. And it'll be very similar to what you see with our latest web edition. As always, a lot of times people want to be able to click on the map and get information. You can do this with the desktop edition as well, by wiring up the click event and querying the different feature layers to get back information associated with them. So all of that is straightforward and what you would expect. Another example that we have here in these is how to plot a longitude and latitude point. In our previous version, we had map shapes, and map shapes were great for doing something like this, plotting one point. But as soon as you wanted to start grouping a lot of things, the whole simple map shapes approach kind of broke down. So what we did in 3.0 is we added this concept of an in-memory layer that allows you to add as many geographic features to an in-memory layer at runtime. So these can be points that are from a database or from a text file or anything along those lines. So now you can add your your points or anything to an in-memory layer, in-memory feature layer, and you have full control over the styling and the zoom levels, just like any other layer that you would have, and can act just like a shapefile feature layer or any other type of feature layer. So kind of a neat thing to help standardize the way you work with all of these layers and geographic features. All right, well, that's a high level getting started to just show you how to do some of the real basic things with Map Suite Desktop. Let's dig into a little more nuts and bolts now. There is the extending map suite, but I'm not going to go into that too much today because the last webinar was really good and explained on how you can inherit from our objects and extend it to do virtually anything that you want to from an API standpoint. So if you are interested in extending Map Suite, I'd advise you to go and review the prior webinar on extending Map Suite, because that's a really good and powerful feature that 3.0 implements that I don't think a lot of people know about. Okay, labeling. Labeling in 3.0 is as easy as you would expect it to be. This sample shows how we can do street labeling, and we've got lots of different ways to do labeling. Of course, you can control all the fonts and the text sizes. We have different placement options of how you want to place the labels on the maps, duplicate rules, overlapping rules. So you really have a lot of control over your labeling to make the maps look as attractive as possible. Here we're showing how to label some points of interest, with city names. In this example, you can see how we can control the point placement. So now we're at the center right. You can choose this to upper left, and all of them will move accordingly. And so doing these types of operations is as easy as just setting a property property on the map for label placement. And you can do that per zoom level as well. So as you can see, there's lots of control that's exposed to you for you to do various tasks. And just in case you're not familiar with the How Do I sample apps, what I'm doing here is I'm clicking the C# source, and you can see all of the source code for each of these. We do give you a Visual Studio project that you can load up and step through each line of these codes and see exactly how it works. So. Moving on, some other neat features that we've added in 3.0 that you may be interested in is the restriction layer. One of the requirements we've had from a lot of customers is they want to restrict what their users are seeing on the map. So, with a lot of mapping applications, they can pan over to areas that they shouldn't be, be looking at, or you want them to just focus on their geographic area and not snooping over and seeing other parts of the country. Well, with this restriction layer, you can basically block out anything but the exact area that you care about. So just like in this example here, if Africa was your area of interest, then nobody can see anything outside of that. So that's a really neat feature that we've had a lot of requests for and have implemented with this new restriction layer type of methodology. The next new thing that all of the 3.0 products support, and I think will be really cool for MapSuite Desktop Edition, is the adornment layer. Now in this sample, we actually use the scale line adornment layer, which allows for the scale bar to be placed down here in the lower left. And what adornments are things that you want to place on top of the map that are really tied to screen coordinates instead of geographic coordinates. So an adornment is something that you want to be on the map at a certain place no matter what. And these can be things like scale bars or scale lines, north arrow compasses. If you wanted to have an image like with a legend that you want to display on there, a real fancy thing, titles, all sorts of that, all sorts of items like that that you want to put on top of the map to give it extra beauty and information. Well, with the adornment layer, what we've done is we've created an API that allows you to do this very easily. So you can add these types of things to your map, and you have complete control over how they're drawn, and you just add them like any other type of a layer, and you don't have to worry about anything else. You just have to worry about where they look like and where you want to place them in screen coordinates, and we take care of the rest. So that's a nice feature with all the 3.0 products that we've got a lot of positive feedback on as well. Okay, moving on to projection. Projection's for those of you that are maybe new to GIS, projection is a way of changing the look of the map. So as you can see here in this case, we projected it to give it more of a global type of view or spherical type of view to where it's almost round. Most of the time a lot of applications are working in just straight long lat or geodetic lack of projections where it's just a flat grid, everything's the earth is square type of mentality. And that works really well and is a very simple approach, but sometimes you need more to give, if you're at the northern latitudes or some other things, to give the look of your map a more appealing view. So we do support a robust projection library with hundreds, if not thousands, of different projections. We're using the open standard Projection 4 library now that uses SRIDs and other well-known strings for projection. So you can easily support many different projections with Desktop 3.0. Additionally, one of the things we wanted to accomplish with 3.0 was map rotation. We thought of a couple different ways to implement this, but what we finally ended up deciding is why don't we implement this as a projection? Because really that's all you're doing is changing the view of the map. So now in 3.0, adding projection is very simple. Adding rotation is very simple. As you can see in this example, we can rotate the map counterclockwise or back and forth. So now rotation is as simple as implementing a projection, which is a big enhancement over 2.0 and previous versions of Map Suite. You know, once you have the view of your map, the panning, and the projection, the labeling figured out, a lot of times you want to do a lot of analysis on your layers, okay, or on the map. And one of the common requests we get is, well, I want to be able to draw a shape and find out things that are either inside that, outside that, intersecting that, and or you know, within a certain distance. Well, for operations for finding inside, outside, or intersecting, among others, we have a very robust spatial query capability. As you can see with this example, we've got a rectangle drawn on the map, and we're saying, give us all the countries that are within this rectangle. Okay. And boom, it'll return a result, and in this case we're highlighting them so you can easily see that. But you can do all sorts of things, such as, you know, drop them out to a list or a report, or do other types of analytical functions based upon that spatial query. Now the other common question we get is, well, I see these others are, you know, why isn't Brazil covered in this? Well, there's different types of within. There's ones that are within where it's completely within, so the entire country is housed within this. And there's others where it is intersecting, which means that any point of that country is somewhere within that rectangle. So if you're going to say, well, who has coverage inside of this rectangle, then you can see any of these countries has at least one little piece inside that or intersecting that rectangle at some point. Now, just as this is done with the rectangle, the same thing can be done with polygons, ellipses, lines, or any geographic shape. So it's a really powerful tool as you start doing a lot of analysis with your data. And here are all the different types of spatial queries. You know, like if you want to get all the ones outside of it, you can do disjointed, and that'll show you all of the countries outside of that rectangle. So lots of options with spatial queries. I think it's a feature that a lot of our customers use, but maybe some of our customers don't know about. So a lot of cool stuff you can do with spatial queries, and I invite you to look at this sample and play with it if you get a chance. Another common thing for analysis is distance queries. So, you know, a lot of times we'll get a request, well, I have a point here and I want to know if these other points or these other features are within a certain distance. You know, they may have a non-compete that they can't open up a business within, you know, 5 miles or something along those lines. Well, in this case, in this example, you can pick, you can click on the point and you can show any of the countries within 1,000 miles, or actually kilometers, or 5,000 kilometers. And that will highlight all the countries that are within that distance at that point. So again, we have robust distance calculations and distance calculation abilities, and it works with all the different geographic types again. So points, lines, polygons, circles, all of that. So you can easily do a lot of this analysis that you may not have known is possible with the Desktop 3.0. One other nice feature when you're wanting to do analysis is our ability to add custom data to the map. This is a feature that maybe isn't real intuitive at first, but is very powerful. So I think it's well worth digging into this one a little bit. So the typical example is okay, well, I've got some data in my back-end database, such as sales numbers or customer customer information, on demographic information, and I want to color some areas on the map. So let's say, for example, that we had a sales database for a company, and they had sales revenues for each of the countries in the world, or maybe not each, but a handful of countries. And management comes and says, well, I want to see these countries colored by who has the most, which country has the most sales. Well, you're not going to find a shapefile. You really don't want to add a column to your shapefile or whatever geographic feature that adds this to be able to do, standard type of rendering based upon, or class break rendering based upon that. You really want to be tied in real time to like a back-end database that runs a query that gets the data, and so the map can change over time as sales fluctuate in certain parts of the world. Well, what we do is we allow you to add custom fields to the layers, as many as you want. And when that shape goes to render, we raise you a custom event and say, hey, here is this field we're trying to render. Why don't you populate this field? So for example, in my scenario that I just said, when the application loads, you go out and hit your database, you get back a result set that has the country and the sales dollar figures for all of that. And you store that in some internal variable or however you wish to store it. Then when you set up the map, you say, well, I have this custom column I want to set up for sales amount. And when that map goes to render, it will raise an event up to you for each country that goes to render and says, hey, populate this, and give you the ability to populate that custom column for sales amount. Now what that does is that allows you to write all your rendering code for styling and for doing thematic mapping or class breaks, just as if that column sales data was in the shapefile or the feature source natively. So you can keep your code separate, and it gives you a really powerful way to bring your data into the map and make it live in real time. So if you get a chance, this is another feature that I don't know that a lot of people are aware of that allows for great customization of the maps and seeing your data that maybe you haven't thought about putting on a map before. It gives you a real eloquent way to do that. Again, if any of you have any questions on these samples as I'm going over, I invite you to ask them on the question dialogue on the webinar. We're more than happy to help answer any questions or go into other areas that you may want more information on. All right. In my presentation, I talked about now that we just don't support shapefiles. We support all sorts of different types of GIS data sources. So under data providers here, we've got some examples of the different kinds that we do. So like one here is an Oracle feature layer that would use Oracle Spatial to retrieve geographic attributes. And you can see in this sample that you just create an Oracle layer or Oracle feature layer, you give it a connection string in your table, and then you can use it just like any other layer by setting your zoom levels and your styles and everything else. So we give you a consistent way of defining how to render these data sources all through our object model, but you can hook to various different ones. Just like we did with Oracle, we have support for PostGRE SQL. So if you're using that database and you have like the PostGIS extensions, you can utilize a lot of that to hold your mapping information and get the benefits of a spatial database versus a flat file. With our samples, we've actually created the PostGRE extension, which is an extension DLL that's included with the evaluation edition, so you can try that out. So that shows how you can hook to these different databases. Shapefiles, of course, are very common, and we still have robust support for them, and will for as long as they're around, which I imagine will be a long time. It's still the most common format out there for transporting GIS data. So you haven't lost anything on the shapefile area. It's as powerful or more powerful than before. SQL 2008 feature layer. This is using the new, I believe it's geographic data type in SQL 2008, and you can read data directly from your SQL server, and it will display that on the map. So we see a lot of people wanting to house their geographic information, such as area shapes and other things, in SQL Server and get some of the benefits of having that centralized in a back-end database. So we've added support for that, and are looking forward to seeing more and more mapping data head to that back-end database in the future. I talked a little bit about creating in-memory feature layers, and in-memory feature layers are kind of like what our old map shapes were, but they can do so much more than that. An in-memory feature layer